Welcome back to my channel, The Smoking Beard Barbecue. Today we're doing part 2 of the Texas Crutch style brisket. We are going to actually, in this part of the video, I am going to show you the steps and the process that you need using your electric smoker to actually smoke your brisket. Some tips and tricks that I've learned along the way. So my brisket has been in the refrigerator marinating. It marinated overnight. It marinated for about 24 hours. The things that I like to use whenever I'm gonna be smoking a brisket is they're right in front of you. There are a couple of things. First things first is you're gonna need your chips that you're gonna be using for your smoker. You are gonna need some apple cider vinegar, and you are gonna and for my taste, I like to get an apple cider vinegar inside a spray bottle. I also purchased an additional thermometer or a meat probe that's digital, that I can do a wireless, I can be checking it wirelessly through my phone, so through Bluetooth, so that's also nice. Depending on the amount of briskets, you will have to use the amount of racks on the inside. So let me open up the smoker to show you where we're at so far. So because today I'm only going to be smoking one brisket, I actually just am going to use one rack. But this smoker has the availability of 4 racks. And in one of the cooks that I made for a fundraiser, I actually was able to put 5 briskets in here. I put 3 of the heavier ones on top and 2 of the smaller ones overlapping each other on the bottom. Okay, so setup. Very easy setup. Is very self-explanatory. At the very bottom, you're going to have a drip pan. This one needs to be installed all the way to, it needs to be flush to the door, because when this door closes, there's a little channel that goes in there that any of the liquid or any of the water that's collecting here, when you do close it, it goes there, and then it goes back to your grease trap in the back. So that's number one. This is your water pan. This is where this comes into play, your apple cider vinegar. I like to fill this water pan with apple cider vinegar. This allows for your smoker to be it'll have moisture in the actual smoker so that it doesn't dry out your brisket. If you notice, it did not fill up all the way. If that happens, just add a little bit of water and finish that off. So that's 2. You have your rack here. You also, what you want to try to do is make sure you set up your grease trap back here. Make sure it's in place, because when your brisket starts to drain some of that fat, it's going to be coming down here. Of course, here you have your actual, where you're going to be putting in your chips. And sometimes I forget and I haven't checked, so we're going to be finding out together right now. Sometimes when I finish a smoke, I forget to actually remove the remnants of the old smoke, so there might be some chips here. Now there you go. See? So you make sure you get rid of these. Alright, so now that we're ready, now that I have, oh wait, let's open up our chips and load them. For these, don't overload this little hopper, because then it won't smoke the way it's supposed to smoke. So don't overload it, just maybe about 2/3 of the way. You can be coming in every 30 to 45 minutes and actually adding some more. Once you insert it, give it a half turn so that it drops down to the heating element. And actually what I'm going to do right now, I'm actually going to turn it on and connect it so that it can start heating up. I want it to get up to temp before I put in my brisket. So right now, just turn it on. What I'm going to be doing here is I'm actually turning it on. I am going to put temperature. I like to cook at 220, so we're going to hit down to 220. Just bring it down. There it is in time. I'm just going to give it 24 hours. I don't really go by this time. What I end up doing is I actually monitor it my own. I don't worry about the seconds, minutes. So right now, as you notice, we're at 88 degrees because it is here in Texas. It is, it's actually a cooler time in Texas right now when it's usually over 100. But right now it's at 88. The smoker just started to heat up. In a little bit, you're going to start to see it smoke, okay? So now that I have that going, now that I have that starting, the next thing you want to do is you actually want to load your brisket. Now, if you recall, this brisket that I have over here, this was a brisket that I seasoned in the last video. So let's see what this looks like after about 24 hours. So that's your seasoned brisket. It's been in the, look at those juices coming out in the bottom. Wow. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is the placement of the brisket. Now there's a lot of people who have their own opinions about how and where and exactly where to place your brisket. What I've started doing, and it's been working good for me, here in the way your smoker is set up, your heating element is down here on the right side. If you're looking at the smoker, it's on your right side. So I always like to put my thickest part to this side, on the right side. The second thing I also do is I actually put my fat facing down. Okay, some people say fat side up, other people say fat side down. The only reason, my justification for fat side down is because it is going to be heated for the next 12 to 18 and maybe even possibly 20 hours. So the hottest part of your actual smoker is going to be here. So the first thing is you want to protect it from all the heat that's coming up to begin with. And the second thing is the thicker part is going to be in the hotter section. So if anything, it'll even out from this side. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm actually going to place the brisket the way I like it. Fat side down with the thickest part to the right side. So now I laid down my brisket fat side down. I went ahead and I got some more water to be putting into my water pan so I can fill it up before I forget. You want to fill it up to about there. Maybe half an inch, 3/4 of an inch from the top. So the next thing I do here is, I keep it low and slow. I want to cook it at 220. The rule of thumb is an hour to an hour and a half per pound. It's happened to where it's actually been a lot faster than an hour and a half. An hour and a half. Sometimes it's an hour. Sometimes it takes an hour and a half. So it just depends on your brisket the way it's behaving. Okay. So now that I have that, the next thing I want to do is I want to insert my meat probe. Now this is a meat probe that I bought aside from the smoker, because the smoker itself comes with its own meat probe, and you can use this one, it's perfectly fine. But if you want your own to be able to monitor it remotely, you want to install something like this. So I'm going to install this in the thicker part of the brisket towards the middle, and when I install it or insert it, I want to try to not hit any fat whenever it hits to the end. I want to make sure I have a connection to the meat, not fat. The next thing to do, the only other thing that you need to do is two things. For the next 4 hours that you're cooking, you're smoking your brisket, or until the internal temp reaches about 140 to 150, you do want to add as much smoke to the cook as possible. During this time, the brisket will be allowing smoke to penetrate the meat. After about 140 to 150 degrees, the brisket kind of seals itself and it stops preventing smoke coming into the meat as much. Okay, so right now your only job after this is just for the first 4 hours, 4.5 hours, make sure you have chips, make sure it's smoking for you. As you can see right now, it's actually hitting 137. It's been about 7 minutes. It's heating up, so I'm just gonna let it start to smoke, and then we go ahead and go to the next step. Now, why did I recommend a water bottle filled with apple cider vinegar? The reason this is because of the way I like my briskets. I like my briskets with a little bit of bark to it. So after about 6 or 8 hours of it cooking, maybe even after the 4th hour, 4th and a half, after you stop adding the chips to it, what I like to do is every hour or so I like to come out and spray my brisket down with apple cider vinegar. Why? Because this is what's gonna allow it to create a not a crispy bark, just a bark, a nice little bark to it. If you don't like the bark, don't do this step. But if you're the type who likes a little bit of the burnt ends and the bark, this is a perfect way to do it. All you have to do is you open it up and you start to spray. If you notice, the smoke already started coming. So we're 30 minutes into the cook, and as you can, or the smoke, and as you can see, I came out just to make sure it was smoking, and there is no smoke coming out, which tells me that I need to reload the chips. So at this point, all you do is you grab your bag of chips. You go to your tray, you give it a half turn, comes out. You can put a little bit more in there. This is the only thing that, because it's such a small tray, small amount of chips that you're putting at a time, every 30 minutes or so you're gonna have to be coming out for the first 4 to 5 hours to make sure that it has wood to be smoking. Once you do that, give it about 2 or 3 minutes, maybe up to 5 minutes depending on your smoker, and you should start seeing it smoke again. Alright guys, so we're getting to that point in the cook right now. If you look at my internal temp, right now at about 127. So around this time, 120, 30, I would say about 130 to 150 more or less. Anytime after this, this is if you are the type of person who likes a little bit of a bark on your brisket, this is what you would do. You would actually put some apple cider vinegar in a water bottle, and you would go ahead and open up your smoker. And let me see if I can turn on additional light here so you guys can see what's going on. So as it stands right now, you can see, let me clean this off. My brisket right now is looking okay. It's looking decent. It's about to start to get its color. What I want to do right now is I want to introduce some I want to go ahead and introduce some apple cider vinegar to the bark. Now what this will do is this will give it a little bit of a caramelization type of bark on it. It's a nice little cover that goes around it. It gives it a little seal. So you just want to spritz this on. Now if you're going to be staying up with this brisket, or if you're going to be around the air, you're not going to leave it alone, you're not going to go to sleep. What I would do is, if you're going to leave it, if you're not going to wrap it, if you're not going to do the Texas Crutch, I would do that for the next 3 or 4 hours. You know, so you can get a nice little crisp bark around it. If you are going to do the Texas Crutch, well, what you'll do is once you wrap it, you're not going to go ahead and spray it anymore. So right now is the time to try to get the type of bark you want. For me right now, the bark looks a little soft. It looks a little like if it was being done on the oven. So I wanted to have that smoky type, so I'm going to leave it a little bit longer before I wrap it in the Texas Crutch. So at this point in the cook, we are about 12 hours in. I put this brisket in about 12 hours ago. My temperature is at about 162. It's good. It's good. It means it's low and slow. And I finally achieved the bark that I was looking for. Whoa, hold on. I finally achieved the bark that I wanted. Whenever you get to this point, and this depends on the size of brisket you have, and it depends on your taste of how barky you want your brisket. But as at the point that you receive or you get your brisket at the bark that you want, this is a time to pull it out, where you're actually going to stop the brisket from creating a stiffer bark and go ahead and wrapping it Texas Crutch style. So I'm gonna pull this brisket out and I'm gonna show you how to wrap it in the butcher paper and then stick it back in. So you have your brisket. Your brisket is still needs a little bit more time to cook, but this is a time when you want to do the Texas Crutch style. Is when you get your bark exactly the way you like it. This is a nice little burnt on the outside. I want to wrap it and then put it back in the smoker. Now the pros on using a butcher paper meant for smoking instead of foil paper is that this butcher paper still porous, which means it's going to allow some of the smoke, if you're still smoking a little bit, into it, and it's not going to seal it, so it'll have still a little bit of that little outside cook to it. Okay, so the way you set up your butcher paper is in a cross section, so that you have one piece going like this, and you have another piece going the opposite direction. And what you do is you actually just go ahead and fold it in, and you try to keep it as tight as possible. And then you grab the bottom part. As you can see right here, you can see that some of the juices are coming out, which means, unlike the foil paper, this is more of a porous type of wrap. We're going to try to get it in as tight as possible. We're going to go ahead and stick this baby pack into the smoker. Now that you have your brisket wrapped in the butcher paper for the Texas Crutch style smoke, you are going to notice one of the things that does happen when you wrap it is that your internal temp will shoot up a little bit. So just keep an eye on that. Once you wrap a brisket, whether in foil or in butcher paper, it will raise the internal temp a little bit. So in a way, this is kind of like speeding up the process of your smoke. But at this point, all you have to do is close your smoker and just wait till this temperature hits about 190. I wouldn't say no more than 195. I am probably going to put it out closer to the 190, because once you do take it out, it still continues to cook when you let it rest for a couple of hours. But all I'm going to do now is I'm just going to wait for this temperature to hit 190, and then I'm going to pull this baby out, and then we can rest it and then cut it up and see what this baby looks like.